Good afternoon, Scott Redler, T3 Live. Welcome to today's recap. So, I guess an interesting day, right? We came in, futures were down like 10, 11 handles, maybe even a little bit more. You had that quick push to retest last week's low, and then once we held last week's low, maybe some, non-committed shorts cover a little bit. Some guys that test verse that low, which is usually what we do with our 15, 30-minute rule, bought a little bit, but really not that much power. There's not a lot of conviction in the tape, and why should there be? You had Europe down almost 2% across the board, didn't really come off lows. We still don't know what's going to go on as far as Greece back either way. They still can get a deal, and I think shorts are scared to be in if that happens. And then the same way, if we continue just to hear those headlines that they're not near a deal, you get some downside. Or not. I think the main thing also is really just what's the Fed going to do Tuesday, Wednesday, get that event out of the way. Maybe we'll have more clarity. So for now, I've been keeping it kind of tight. If you read my note today, there were definitely some things that worked and some things that just, didn't. So that's why sometimes, less is more, and being a bit more specific is the way to go. You look at the chart here of the SPX and you'll see here is his big support from last week's low, coming in across. That was last week's low right there. That was 2072. This was 2072. Look at that. You didn't have to put that much risk on when it got down there. The bearish camp is starting to say how this is turning into a head and shoulders top, and I pointed that out last week when we actually were right here. I was like, I'm going to position long for a bounce, considering we were just down 5 days. Maybe we bounce up. They get bait some people in to buy in, and then maybe it turns into a short, and it could fail up here. Well, it did fail there, and now maybe this 3-day move was too much, where you still have to hear from the Fed. You still have a few things to go through. So, I think tonight's a crapshoot overnight. Could we open up down again and break this level and see the 200-day for the first time at some point this week? I think there's a probability that could happen. That would actually almost be, the measured move of this. It would probably go a little bit below it. Or, but can we test this first? Can we see 6-7 handles to the upside into the 2095-ish? That could happen too. So if you're active, it's tough to figure that out, which way it's going to go for tomorrow and Wednesday until after the Fed. But ultimately, this is getting a bit pronounced, but you also have a trend line that if you take out and close above, that would blow out this potential right shoulder. If you look at the spiders, it came off those lows and basically held again and held a little bit above it. So can this see a move back into this trend line prior? Maybe. Could it come up and retest these moving averages into this 210-ish area before figuring out the next direction? Perhaps. And I guess on an active basis, you have to figure out where you want to live, because this was your calculated trade. If you got short into this, perhaps the 3-day rule now, you covered here, or maybe, and if you nibbled this time, I don't think you get the same type of move as you got last Wednesday, but maybe a little bit of upside. So we'll see what happens. The Russell held in best. I talked about the 8-21 day this morning in the morning call, and pretty much held again. So at this point, this I guess looks pretty constructive. Also talked about the IBBs and support for this sector, and it came right into it. So if you bought versus support, you made money again. If you pressed it, you're probably frustrated. Same way if you pressed alongside, or right into here, you definitely got frustrated. But still hanging around. Went over the XLF 8-21 day this morning, and the XLF held right above the 21 day, which is what it's been doing for a while during this breakout, and kind of did it again. So we'll see what's next there. And then you had your individual stocks. The cybersecurity names have been real strong. That was my focus this morning. Cyber did that secondary, and they held price, and I think they trapped a lot of shorts and blast off CYBR. Look at that. You could have bought it when it was negative this morning, and then you could have bought it when it went above right here, this prior high, which was 66.65, and then look where it is, right back at all-time highs. So with that being said, very strong. When you look at groups, sometimes it works where there's continuity, and when this was green and up $1 or so, FireEye was, still was down 50 cents. So that became a decent trade also. Where, look at that, held the 8-day, played catch-up, showed some strength on Friday, and then took off and basically cleared the prior pivot. So this is, in my rule book, this is a potential take-home, not as extended and strong. And this was something to look at with the down futures. It was very strong into Friday. Friday, the market was down 150 some odd points, and this was green. That's why it became a focus. So just trying to give you a little bit of the backbone to some of the rules and why sometimes they work. So that was that. And some of the key names you definitely saw, some bottom tails, just like the indices. Apple, you can't say is a barn burner, but closed close to green. Towards the end of the day, I bought a little bit. It failed into here, right, into that 3-day move. But if you would have taken it you got paid a little bit. So here you are, a little bit of support. I don't think it's going to be one of those blockbuster take out 128s and go, but if you want to be long something overnight, maybe there's a chance that this could see 128, which is $1 or so before you have to worry about big time resistance. At least when I went over with on the VTF towards the close, I'm like, if you think we're going to be up a little bit tomorrow, maybe don't do the indices, because if we're down, they might not give you a way out of the indices, but if we're down and you have some stocks that showed a little strength, kind of like what happened on Friday, you'll get a way out perhaps better than the indices. So if you were looking for some exposure to risk, that's why this, I think, this Apple is a little bit better than taking like the Qs and the spiders or whatever. We caught a good trade in Netflix today. At least, we did on the VTF. I tried to. I didn't take it home long, but it came into the 8-day and held, closed strong, probably get some type of gap fill. I don't know if it just gets up and takes off, but there was a decent calculated trade for about 10 points. You go to the 5-minute chart on Netflix, and I'll show you, when we talked about it and got on the VTF. Basically, I think I got in right around here, actually, right there, 644. Okay, went sideways when the futures made a new low. It didn't, and then a little bit more right here, and then gave you a decent trade. They actually even gave you an afternoon trade if you wanted it. 2 o'clock it broke above the morning high and gave you something to do. Not a blockbuster, but something to do. And as a trader, you need something to do. So anyway, we'll see what happens here. 8 days been a guide, went a little bit below, held it, so this still is considered best in breed. Google and Amazon didn't really rally at all, so I guess we'll see what happens there. Big red bar, 3 days up, 3 days down. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Very frustrating name for some people. Google also, just sort of horrendous, right, where it's just still in this range, and even for those who pressed it short to break this range, they probably are frustrated the same way people pressing this to the long side are just as frustrated. We'll see what's next there. Facebook came off the lows, so if you were looking for something that is acting sort of better than other things, this Facebook is, a candidate. I mentioned it this morning in my morning note that also this perhaps could be something to show some relative strength, and it did. And I don't think all of a sudden it's going to be taking out this 82 and change, but maybe for a trade, if you needed to be in something, this was better than other things. It's been trying to hang in better than your LinkedIn and better than your, your Twitter. LinkedIn actually LinkedIn didn't, do so bad today. I got stopped out on Friday, didn't really look at it. Still had the 8-day at some point. Maybe if you're watching it close and volume comes in, there could be a trade into that gap. Hasn't fallen apart. Twitter, just look at it like this, okay? If this was something besides Twitter, okay, the only news that people were looking for that could have helped this stock in this range was if, Dick, I hate saying that, the CEO Costello resigned, and he resigned, stock was up, and they sold it. So right there, that was a definitive sell signal if you were trying to play it in this range. So if you were in the camp saying, how did this happen? You should understand the rules a little bit more. First of all, it's been below the 21-day, not above it during this entire move, so it's in a downtrend, not an uptrend. And so until that changes, you be careful. And it was up 7% excited, and they sold it. So if you were in it, you had a little bit of time to get out. Now at this point, I just think it's somewhat of an avoid. Down here, I just think it's going to have to break a little lower before all of a sudden you can get saved again with some kind of catalyst, and that could be a little bit closer to the $32 to $30 range. So we'll see. What did oil do today? Oil, little green bar. Last week we talked about how 2080 could be a spot to watch if it gets rejected or reclaimed. It got rejected, and now if you sold it there after that move, today it went green. Wasn't a lot of money in there, but 20 cents is 20 cents percentage-wise, something. Still hanging around, but just nothing blockbuster. Talk about blockbuster, I guess we could talk about IMAX because guys were trading that. Nice move. Jurassic Park, a lot of people went to see it in that kind of theater, and it's looking really, really trend. Look at this trend above the 8-day from here. It's 2 days up, so if you still have some, it's okay. It showed relative strength in the market today. A lot of talk is, imagine how many people went to see Jurassic Park in an IMAX. Wait till Star Wars comes out, especially old school guys like me who don't go to the movies that often, and I love that from back in the day. Probably will see it in some kind of quality setting. So whatever, just more fuel out there for this. It's hard to buy it 2 days up, extended into highs, but it doesn't mean it's a short. What else were people doing today? Oh, FSLR went green first. Nice move for that stock today. Went green. We talked about it in the VTF. I did not trade it. I was like, oh, nice lower pivot, green first. What's the news? And I didn't follow up on it. Then all of a sudden started to clear this and had a decent day. You go to basic studies, you go to volume to see if there was some volume there, and there was some volume there. So something to have if you needed to be in something. Same way I took this. I took this little guy just overnight. Decent engulfing bar. Stock has pulled in. Some sales traders think it's got huge potential. So on the dip, finally a decent day with some volume attached. Perhaps some guys who cover it get behind it again. So I'm in small, very small. I hate being in these pharmaceutical or bio type things, but that's where some of the action's been. Go to KYTH. A lot of guys in the VTF were talking about you didn't have to be in the spiders, the Qs, the IWM. All you need to do is watch this trend above the 8 and 21 day, and when it cleared this, nice breakout trade. We don't see many charts like this. These are the type of charts that are awesome, right? Comes back up, clears this spot, comes in, backs off the high a little bit, shows some relative strength, reverses today. You could have bought it when it went green. You could have bought it above here and closed strong with some volume. We used to have a lot of those to focus on, like 8 candidates, and now we're down to so few, but nothing we can do about it. This is the market that's in front of us, not the one that we want. And some people are thinking, when's the next bear market? And the joke's been there's been bear market on follow-through, upside or downside, only in small specific spots. And the only fast move has been the false move. When everyone thinks that we're going to go higher and we fail, it's a stampede out and we go down quickly. And then once we go down quickly, you might want to short it thinking that we don't bounce, and then we bounce back up. Then all of a sudden, people think we're going to fade to the downside and break a level, and the fast move is to the upside because it's shorts getting squeezed, kind of like last Wednesday. And then once we think we can go sideways, then we pull back in. So it's been one of those frustrating tapes where the fast move is the false move, so there's not that much follow through, and you have to be that prepared because the trade's so specific that you need to somewhat think what's going to happen ahead of time, and when the market confirms it, you got to be there fast because it does the move all at one time. And that's pretty much sums it up. But what could help you be prepared, I believe, is my note. My note has about 30 names in it. I go over the 4 or 5 indices. I go over levels. I go over potential if-then strategies. And you get the email 8:30 in the morning, print it out in front of you. So it's almost like you have your levels in front. So you don't have to scroll through stuff when things start to move. And you can be prepped and prepared for when the market starts trading. And if things do start to confirm what's on there, you could execute with a better plan. And that's about it. Monday night, hopefully the storm passes over because my son's running his first 5K tonight. I had to age him up from 6 to 7 because they only give out chips for 7 and above. So hopefully we're not disappointed with thunderstorms. Have a good night.